If I was to give one true positive to the year 2020, it would be how much genuinely great music we got. Honestly, I could go on for hours about all the wonderful albums we got across all genres this year, but that would make for an incredibly long, boring video, so instead, here are my 10 favourites.
In truth, the bills, they must be paid, and what is left?
At number 10, we have Gorillaz with Song Machine Season 1, Strange Times. Damon Albarn's little experiment has been going strong for just over 20 years now. That's 20 years worth of genre-bending alt-rock classics that have brought us to this new chapter in the band's evolution. Albarn seems to have taken somewhat of a backseat with this latest record, allowing his collaborators, which were always a big part of Gorillaz' sound, to really help mould the tracks. The result being an infectiously weird pop album that never skips a beat. This is the kind of album that could be played in its entirety at a summer pool party, you know, with everyone just casually listening and hanging out, but could also be dissected and pulled apart by any music nerd. You know, it keeps everyone happy, and that's what I love about it so much. If this is just the beginning of what the Song Machine series has to offer, then personally I cannot wait to see what else Damon has in store. At number 9, we have Poppy with I Disagree. Right at the start of the year, we were graced with one of the most interesting albums we would get the chance to spin in 2020. I do not have the time to explain Poppy to those of you who are not initiated in this particular corner of internet culture, but in the simplest terms, Poppy was always half surreal art project.
I'm Poppy, I'm Poppy, I'm Poppy, I'm Poppy, I'm Poppy.
Half pop princess.
You're the highlight of my Lowlife.
So naturally, she decided to start off the new decade with a new metal album. And I'm not making any of this up. I Disagree finds this beautiful balance between metalcore heavy riffs and a bubblegum pop energy that creates this oddly disturbing yet enchanting atmosphere that just hooks you in immediately. The clear appreciation for both genres, both musical styles, really shines through, making this feel like so much more than just a marketing ploy or a gimmick, and just more of a real step forward, a real evolution to Poppy's sound. It's honestly maybe the most fun I had listening to an album this year, and I'm gonna be honest, that could come from the sheer shock that a new metal album by Poppy was actually good, but trust me, this one paid off. At number 8, I have Eels with Earth to Dora. There are certain artists that, no matter what, you can always rely on a great album. And after 24 years since Eels first came to our attention with Beautiful Freak, they continue to be one of those artists. Earth to Dora is another hauntingly beautiful yet darkly sarcastic and witty album, much like what most of us have come to expect from E at this point. This time around, I definitely feel more of a Leonard Cohen influence, as E allows his lyrics to speak more for themselves, allowing for the more crushing moments of poetry to really hit harder. It's more reserved than some of Eels' other recordings, and the result is an album that can just wash over you like water.
Between wrath and mercy, gotta simmer, 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 simmer down. Control. There's so many ways to give in.
At number 7, I have Hayley Williams with Petals for Armour. Hayley from Paramore took 2020 to prove that she is so much more than just Hayley from Paramore. Petals for Armour feels like a passion project in the best sense. Williams touches on many of the same topics as Paramore's latest outing, After Laughter, but with a much more honest and vulnerable approach than that album went for. The result is a tight pop album where Williams feels in control the whole time. It's a great album if you want to hear some really well produced pop music, with so much more going on just below the surface if you're willing to dig in ever so slightly. And you're completely invited to explore as deep as you want.
We know sobriety won't teach the kids to dance. She's my cyanide. I drink her.
At number 6, I have Creeper with Sex, Death, and the Infinite Void. 3 words. Goth cannot die. The Southampton-based punks completely escaped the sophomore slump by delivering yet another dive into their twisted sense of reality. While this 2017's Eternity in Your Arms may have been a loud and intense tribute to old school punk rock, Sex, Death and Infinite Void goes for more of a 50s rock and roll aesthetic, while still putting everything through the purple and black filter that the band has become known for. This makes an engaging listen that leaves you completely displaced in time, while at the same time feeling nothing but the urge to shout along with the anthemic choruses of Be My End and Cyanide. The darker subject matter and deliberately over-the-top dramatic elements, but under it all, this is just a very solid rock album, and that's what we've been sorely missing these past few years.
The day of anger, bitterness, and doubt. I know how it happened.
At number 5, I have Bob Dylan with Rough and Rowdy Ways. There is nothing controversial about claiming that Bob Dylan is one of the greatest artists of all time. With a stellar back catalogue spanning 60 odd years at this point, with hundreds of timeless songs behind him, and many all-time classic albums. What's most impressive about Dylan's career, in my opinion, however, is the fact that almost 6 decades in, it still feels like an event whenever he announces he's releasing a new album. And with Rough and Rowdy Ways, he proves exactly why that is. Dylan is a master storyteller. I mean, he's a Nobel laureate for a reason. Drawing on real-world events and points in his own career, he provides the listener with nostalgic tales of the 60s, wrapped in neat literary homages and intertwined in intense metaphor. Sonically, this album calls back to the likes of Bringing It All Back Home, where Dylan first picked up his electric guitar, to, at the time, mixed reviews, to put it lightly. Just like the best of his classic output, this album is something you can just get lost in. Closing with the powerful 17-minute spoken word piece, Murder Most Foul, which proves without a shadow of a doubt that this man is nowhere near ready to slow down. This is Dylan's best work in years, and honestly, in my opinion, is up there with some of the best of his work.
The hook gon' be the last thing she remember. The fast lane in December, often drift when she drive. College girl looking for...
4, I have Clipping with Visions of Bodies Being Burned. Coming off the back of 2019's There Existed an Addiction to Blood, the LA-based hip-hop group continued their dive into horrorcore with an equally as disturbing, dark, twisted and playfully well-written album, serving as its companion piece. David Diggs' flow throughout this album is very controlled, giving the illusion of a far-off narrator heartlessly explaining each and every detail of these twisted little stories he's come up with. Producers William Hudson and Jonathan Snipes complement Diggs' flow perfectly, with beatwork that borders on industrial noise rock, while at other points fading into a deceptively calming atmosphere. This is not an album for everybody, as in recent years, Dig seems to be carving out a place in hip hop that shows he's more than that guy from Hamilton. If you've been looking for some genuinely interesting and challenging rap music, then do not continue to sleep on what Clipping have been doing recently.
Cause now there ain't no letting you go. Am I falling in love with the one that could break my heart? Oh no.
On a different note, at number 3 I have Dua Lipa with Future Nostalgia. Future Nostalgia makes my top 3 simply for just being a great dance album. This is the album I spent most time with this year, as I kept finding different reasons to go back to. It's an infectious album where each track has the ability to get lodged deep in your brain days after you spin it. Not to mention the delightfully confident and harshly sarcastic lyrics on this thing. But not very cynical look on relationships, only to pull the curtain back just enough to show some real genuine heart. I absolutely love this album and will continue to play it repeatedly moving into 2021.
I knew you dancing in your Levi's, drunk under a street light. I knew you, hand under.
At number 2 I have Taylor Swift with Folklore. Did you think I wasn't gonna include it? Or Folklore was the album that most surprised me this year. Well, maybe other than the Poppy one.
I disagree with the way you continue to pressure me.
But yeah. Taylor Swift brought us a beautiful little indie pop record filled with beautiful little story songs. This is the perfect album to play in your earphones while going a walk in the woods or in the middle of autumn. And a perfect album to play through the best sound system to just appreciate the artistry. This offers the best lyricism of Swift's career, the most engaging instrumentation. If you weren't completely sold on it the first time around, I mean, there's 2 of them now. Evermore didn't quite make my list this year, but trust me, it's also brilliant.
Shameika said I had potential. Shameika said I had potential. Hurricane Gloria in ecstasis stale. That's my bird and my tree.
And the number 1 position this year goes to Fiona Apple with Fetch the Bolt Cutters. Fiona Apple is an artist that always seems destined to make best of the year lists every time she releases an album. And there is a good reason for that. Fetch the Bolt Cutters is yet another instant classic from Fiona Apple. Marching along to the backing of those insane drums that give the album its unique sound, Apple runs head first into the full range of emotion as she tackles themes as heavy as abuse and as personal as her own experiences growing up and learning to trust people. This is a total triumph of an album that in years to come will be in every albums you must hear list. Apple kicked off the 2020s with the one thing the late 2010s had been sorely missing: pure, creative attitude. There you have it, guys. Those are my 10 favourite albums of last year. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Tell me, what did I forget? What might I missed? I'm always looking for great new music. What music are you excited for in 2021? Let me know. And stay tuned, as I'm planning on doing a further top 10 for the best movies of 2020, which granted was a difficult list because there wasn't a lot to choose from, but I still think I've got a decent amount to talk to you about. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you later. I'm out.